Hello, everyone, and welcome to Small Business USA. I am so happy to have our expert, Ed Drozda, here. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Colleen. How you doing?
Good. And for those of you that don't know, Ed is the owner of the Small Business Doctor. It's E&D Associates, but he likes to go by the Small Business Doctor. And today we will kind of take that charge because I think he's going to help a lot of you cure some of your challenges around being a small business owner. So I'm happy to have you here, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to just say this in advance. My lovely little bird Lola is in the background there. If her tweeting gets too loud, somebody raise a hand so I can move her to another location, because the more sound she hears, the more she wants to talk. But for the moment, let's consider her a pleasant distraction, if you will. Colleen, I wanted to talk today about some simple steps, easy steps to create a successful, healthy business. And I have actually three, and three alone that I want to talk about. They are: create a safe environment, be adventurous and inquisitive, and ask a lot of questions. Those three things.
Oh, I have so many questions already, Ed.
Okay, well, I can defer to you to start that, or I can go on.
Well, let's go. What do you mean by create a safe environment? Tell people what that means, because I don't know that. I have to put my glasses on so I can see everybody. Sorry. Age.
A safe environment is probably a concept that everyone knows. They just never heard it described that way. A safe environment is a business place where there is an abundance of trust. Communication is open. The management, supervision, and executive teams are non-judgmental. Ideally, that leads to the staff at any level being the same. And the people collectively rally around the core business purpose, the purpose of the business itself. That is what I refer to as a safe environment. Now, it's not to say that it's something that is provided. It's something that has to be worked on. It has to be coaxed, and it has to be nurtured in order for it to develop and to remain intact.
I think what's one thing that's really interesting, we've been doing a lot of work with doctors and all different kinds of doctors and attorneys and these places that you would just automatically think these are office environments, these are businesses that feel safe, right? Everybody goes in there with this great purpose and this greater good, and I would love for you to dig in, because I could probably rattle off, but nobody's joining this call to hear me rattle off my ideas. Like, let's talk about that environment, that safety space, Ed, because I think surprisingly it's not always safe for the employee.
Right, and that's the environment that I'm referring to. That what you're referring to is at least the impression that the client gets when they come into the physician's office. They feel they're in a safe place. They're going to be treated well. They're going to be treated, and their health will be restored, and so on and so forth. But the safe environment to which I refer is that of the employees and the business in which they work. It's knowing that not only am I going to a place where I can express my creativity and I can feel passionate about the work that I do, but I can feel safe in contributing to it. In other words, I'm more than just an automaton. I don't simply provide a service or a task to my employer. I actually provide information and service that benefits the company as a whole. That's a safe environment. That's a place where I am a contributor more than just simply an employee.
I'd love to give an example of that, because I think business owners, and we've talked about this a lot, and I think this is what you're really best at doing. You're really best at kind of dissecting the problem.
Right.
I think for business owners, they don't always see that problem in the beginning. And I'll just share an example from one of our doctors. And I so appreciate this doctor, because this doctor had us come in and actually work with the team there. But there were two receptionists. The doctor would come out, rattle off a whole bunch of things that needed to get done. I'm trying to be very as general as I can without giving anything away, and kind of stick to my own oath of privacy, right, and my safety. But and then would kind of run back in after several patients, be really upset that the work hadn't been completed and done, completely oblivious to what had happened between point A and point B, and then said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it," and would then go ahead, intercede, and start working on that work that was assigned and delegated,
Right.
not asking great questions. So let's talk about that situation, because it happens so often. But I will tell you, those two employees didn't feel, I mean, in the context, as I understand what you're saying, those two employees didn't feel safe. It wasn't that they didn't enjoy their boss or they didn't have the right intentions, but they didn't feel safe in that environment.
Right. And, you know, as I mentioned, the safe environment is something that's nurtured. And we all know that nurturing anything in the midst of a crisis or a acute situation is not very practical. So what had to be done was to have been done before that moment. Naturally, at that moment, there are a lot of priorities and a lot of things impacting upon both the physician and his staff. And at that moment, he might have just chosen to say, well, I'll get it done because I can do it, kind of thing. But that's at the moment. Having prepared for that in advance, okay, doesn't necessarily mean that it wouldn't happen, but the people's attitude about that would be different. Knowing that there's going to be times, understanding that there's going to be times when stress levels are high, and this is how I react in those situations, people can be prepared. So it can be a safe environment, even though it's superficially it looks like, ooh, it's a scary place. Maybe it's not, if they prepared in advance and said, hey, we're going to have those days, we're going to have those moments where, it's my nature to just pick it up and do it myself instead of leaving for somebody else because I'm just like that. Okay. It's about nurturing.
I love what you said, because it kind of fits into that 5 dysfunctions of team, right? If you know you're like that,
yep,
and you have a team, by preparing them for it and empowering them to come back at you and say, listen, Colleen, you've done it again.
Yep. Yeah.
It makes it safe, it makes it okay, and you can respond.
Right. It is safe to reciprocate or to simply ignore it, for that matter. If the situation calls for it and I just choose to say, oh, it's Colleen, do anything. Okay, fine. And at that moment, I'm not dismissing Colleen. I'm accepting Colleen, but I'm going about what I have to do without being impacted upon by it yet. So that's the key. So,
and how often does the business owner miss the fact that they're not creating a safe environment for their team?
I think unfortunately it's a little bit tricky, because knowing whether you have a safe environment or not really is something that has to come from the bottom up. While it's created from the top down, it has to be informed from the bottom up. It's a little bit unfortunate like that. In my opinion, though, I might set out to create a safe environment in my business, but that doesn't mean that people are going to grasp that. I have to learn from them what creates a safe environment. Right. So I think the key is for a business owner to elect to be aware of and concerned about providing a safe environment, and then seeking input and feedback from his or her employees as to create that. It's not something that a business owner can contrive. Mm-hmm. I don't come up with a plan and say, this is a safe environment, here it is. That doesn't work. Right then and there, that's restricting and diminishing the value of the employees. That doesn't work that way. It goes the other way.
I am, and I can't even believe I'm repeating this again. This is like the 3rd week in a row, but I think it's really important, business owners, that you take the time and you bring in that third party if you believe that this might apply to you, because in 93%, they did a major study with 40,000 employees that they all liked their boss. They were all very happy. They considered their boss a great boss or a friend. And in 93% of those instances, they would not tell the truth to their boss, whether they didn't want to hurt their feelings or for whatever reason. I think that's kind of where it's really important to have that third party, right, that can ask those questions to really assess. So let's go on to number 2.
Okay, to be adventurous and inquisitive.
Yeah, I love this one.
Excuse me. So here I've got exploring new possibilities, engaging all ideas from all parties, and I'm saying that at all levels of the organization we need to engage the ideas that are coming from everyone, and develop a sense of risk neutrality. And what I mean by that is, rather than you don't want to be risk averse, nor do you want to be a showboat. Risk neutral allows you to sit poised to take advantage of the things that come along. Okay, this is the adventuresome part. adventurous part. Risk neutrality is a tricky thing. A lot of people feel that they have to be, risk averse in order to remain in a safe place. But by being risk averse, we're often missing opportunities that are sitting right in front of us. Okay, so it's a balance. It's a balancing act, but it really all goes down to the term adventurous. Don't be caught up in the same old when there may be something amazing out there for you. That if you just simply relaxed a little bit, looked outside of the margins of your typical format, and the things that could happen would be pretty profound.
So as a business owner, Ed, how do you know if you're landing in the right spot in that spectrum for you? I think there's a caveat for you, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody's going to see things different. I mean, there are people who are by nature risk averse, and there's really nothing that is comfortable for them outside of that space. I mean, for some people, it's a legitimate psychological paradigm. They cannot get around that. And in their case, that's not the place to go. For those people that are amenable to the concept of moving from a risk averse position, it is probably best explained by just pointing out little things that are evident within the business, little things that might be visible to the third party, myself in this case, that they don't see. Say, you guys are doing a really great job with this. And, there's an underserved population over there. I never hear you talk about them, but what about them? Now, it's risk because it's new. Opening up possibilities like that, moving beyond that state of static state. I shouldn't even say static. It's not about being static. It's about being willing to take steps that are not necessarily in their comfort zone.
It's funny. We hear this a lot with our accounting firms, even sometimes with our attorneys. They that whole risk space is very uncomfortable, right? They're very risk averse. But one thing that somebody told me that moved me, one of our members told me that just moved me, because let me tell you, I'm a risk taker. That's why we have, that's why InsightCEO is created. That's where networking golf came from, generating winners. I mean, I thrive on it, right? So it doesn't even, this is who I am. So I'm not afraid to push people out of their comfort zone either. But I remember very early on in our inception several years ago, somebody said to me, Colleen, just remember, for us to make these changes in our business, how scary that is. Even though it makes sense, even though we need to do it, it's so scary. And that's one thing for me that I've really tried to treasure and hold on to, because it is, I didn't see that right away. It took a sledgehammer hitting me in the head to say, oh, what do you mean people are afraid to do things that are going to be great for the business? It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But it really is, to kind of change what you're always doing is really challenging. So how do you, I'm sure as a consultant, you're faced with this all the time. People who don't want to get out of their comfort zone, and you're kind of kicking them and moving them along. What do you do? How do you help them? How did they find that safe place?
Well, I think for myself, for me specifically, it really, it isn't so much pushing them. It's pulling them in the direction of where they've said that they want to go, and reminding them that they had already indicated that this is what they're hoping for. But in order to get there, something has to change. It's the same thing, Colleen, that you said. It's just it's done a different way is all. People are afraid. People are afraid of, taking risky steps or doing things that they've not done before because they don't know what's going to happen, and that's perfectly fine. But if they have a goal in mind that can't be reached in the current circumstances, or has not been reached with everything that they've done, they will admit, well, I've got to do something different. So it's really about reminding them of where they're looking to go versus how they get there, what that means. Okay. Right. You kind of saying someone should be risk neutral is one thing, but in practice, it's more about saying, where are you looking to go and how are you going to get there? Then it comes back to the risk neutrality, where it's like, well, then in order to do that, you're going to have to step closer to the edge of the diving board. Okay. You may not have to jump in, or you might jump in, you might hold your nose, you might not, whatever, but it's it's a stepwise process. It's, you know, it's not all or none, and it's not necessarily a quick thing.
I think that's the gift of having a consultant. And I see, like, I think about, as you're talking about this story, right? And you're saying, go to the edge of the diving board. You're right there holding their hand, and I think that's really a gift. And I hope every one of the consultants for Small Business USA is doing the same thing. But sometimes you do need that person to just hold your hand and jump off with you, and know that you're not alone there. What I love about the peer advisory boards for that reason is you can have, 5 or 10 people on a peer advisory board meeting. And, I may have this wonderful idea, and business owner Pete looks at me and goes, "Ooh, that's a little risky." It is amazing when that fear strikes, how many people can really come to the table with other ideas that are more comfortable, that make more sense, that align with that person's skill set. And so business owners, I really think that whether you're with a board, whether you're with a private consultant like Ed, I think you have to find that person that knows how to grab your hand the right way and jump off with you, right? I mean, it's so important, that relationship that you have.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Trust. It goes back to consulting is no different from step 1. It's that safe trust environment.
Right. Absolutely.
So, okay. And number 3.
Ask a lot of questions. I know it sounds pretty simplistic, but this goes for everybody in an organization or in a small company or for a solopreneur. If you don't get it, ask. If it doesn't work, explore. If it feels wrong, investigate. If something is not sufficient enough for you to take the steps that you're supposed to take or you anticipate necessary to take, if you have a niggling feeling that something is out of line, okay, ask, explore, investigate. Don't just simply sit quietly and go, okay, fine. Ask a lot of questions.
Somebody once said to me, totally unrelated to Small Business USA, but an old mentor used to say, if I knew the right questions to ask, I'd get better answers. I think it really is. How do you know the right answers to ask? I think you gave us a couple ideas, but what advice would you give him?
I'm sorry. I think that one went over my head. Can you try that again?
Yeah. His comment was, if I asked better questions, I'd get better answers, and it's how do you know that you're asking the right questions?
I think that, first of all, I like his saying. I think that's great. If I ask better questions, I'd get better answers. I think that's absolutely great. I think, again, it's a process. I mean, you ask the questions that you believe are appropriate, but then the conversation begins. It may not necessarily be, and probably shouldn't be, always a straightforward answer. Sometimes it takes, a little clarification. So I believe I heard you say, and then, yes, I did, or no, I didn't, or I really meant, or whatever. So the answers aren't necessarily immediately forthcoming. When the answers are found, when the right questions are asked, the answers are those that make sense, that they fit the situation. They are actionable. They are practical within the realm of what resources are available to the business itself, and they ultimately have the desired effect.
So I'm curious. I think about salesmen when you're talking about this, right? Salesmen, natural salespeople are really good at that affirming question. They ask questions to get the answer yes, right? And I think it's so natural for them. And there's a lot of great business people who are salesmen naturally in their heart. Do they run a risk of hurting their business because they're so good at asking affirming questions versus asking questions they really need to know the answer to?
I do not position myself as a salesperson. So if I were to take that former course, it would be wrong for me. That would not work for me. If I were to ask questions seeking yes, no, it would be totally inappropriate. I guess my point is that it really depends on what you're doing. I think personally that it's far more effective to open a conversation where you can get to the real source of what matters. If I was selling something to someone, I'd want to know that they truly want to buy it. Not that I convinced them to buy it, because that really means nothing in the end. I might get a sale today, but I'll have a long-standing hatred down the road. Okay, I look for things that are sustainable and sustainable. So I think that being able to ask questions that really get to the source of the matter are the most important thing. Not what I'm looking for, but what my clients are looking for.
Do you have a favorite question to ask?
I have so many questions. I don't even really think I know where to start. I mean, more so than questions. I think I have little quips that I put out there for people. Things like, you can't get there if you're not willing to go there. In other words, this is what I'm going to do, but I'm not willing to take the steps to do that. Or I'm doing things that are totally, in contradiction to what I'm looking to accomplish. Well, then you're not willing to go there, are you? But yet you want to go there. So solving those kinds of riddles. But questions really, I mean, I don't know. There's so many questions that I pose. I will tell you one thing in general about the questions that I pose, and that is that they're generally very pointed. I call it fearless questioning. I don't hesitate to step into the ring of fire and say, okay, well, boom, right at you. Knowing full well that the source of the problem may be my client, the perspective from my side is that they're certainly involved, and calling them out on it and giving them an opportunity to explore it. Not accusing them, but giving them an opportunity to explore it, opening that conversation. Questions need to be fearless in that if you're looking to get to a place, you have to be willing to take the journey. You have to be willing to go there.
I love that. I think every business owner should ask a question of their team. And one habit I've always had, and I share it with a lot of our members, and I'll share it with everybody here, if you're a business owner and you have a team, force them every single week to give you one piece of feedback. Say, what would you do to make this business better? However you want to ask it. What would you do if you were me to connect with my people better? Every single week, get in a habit of statusing with them and getting them to give you some type of tough feedback. With your team, that's going to help with that safe piece. But the other thing it's going to do is get them really comfortable giving you that critical feedback that you need. So when you go to do something really tragic that might really hurt your business, they're going to be comfortable stepping up. But one of my favorite questions has always been, if you own my business, what would you do differently? And it's a good place to start because it makes you think, and it's not a threatening question, but it makes somebody think about, they may sometimes know that answer already, but it will give you, I think be wary of yes or no questions. Right. Hey, do you think this looks good? It's the worst question ever. Yes. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to tell you no, right?
Yeah. You think I'm doing a good job, Ed?
Sure.
I ask my mother all the time, Mom, did you watch the interview, the Ask the Expert call? Do you think I moderated well? Oh, yes, honey, you did a great job. Sometimes you ask what you want to hear, right? But I think, I love that. Ask really good questions. And what other, I think those are really three great things to really challenge business owners on. I'm going to ask, one question that comes up and that I always struggle with as the owner of Small Business USA is, how do I help business owners know when they're in the weeds and when they're too close to their own business? I mean, you generally come in as a consultant. Generally, a consultant comes to you when they're in trouble, right? When they don't know how to solve it. When they, we get members that their business got this far and they really want to get here. They don't know how. But how do you know, like those 85% of businesses that go out of business every year, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm one of them on this call right now, how would I know if I'm in the weeds and too close to my business?
With the exception of the solopreneur who has no one else to reach out to in the business, although they do certainly have family, friends, and otherwise that are aware of their business. I would say one of the most glaring flags that could be identified is simply that they're not talking to anybody about what they're doing. That's in the weeds. When you are singularly running your business, when you are not asking, seeking, or getting information from other people, you are in the weeds. You are an automaton. You're doing what is there to be done. You're alone. And I think when you're alone, you're clearly in the weeds. That's how I see it.
I will tell you, one of the moments that was really career changing for me was the first time I hired a virtual assistant, right? You give all that stuff to a virtual assistant, and then you look back and you say, how do I have all this free time? And how have I really been spending my time? And it's that gap that you say, I haven't been working on the right things. What have I been doing?
Yep.
Have you ever had an aha moment that you'd want to share?
I think that I've had a number of aha moments, but I think the ones that I've had that were most valuable or experienced were most valuable are the ones I've seen through other people. Where this one gentleman, I've spoken about him before, who was spending inordinate amounts of money on sales training for good salespeople, only to and when the question was simply posed, why are you spending all that money on good salespeople? And he just was like, oh. I think it's one of the biggest light bulb moments I ever experienced, because although it was readily identifiable, visible to me, he obviously didn't see it because he was so engrossed in it that he had no idea. And it was very powerful. I think that's one of the beauties of coaching is that, what we do is we facilitate versus dictate. It's not my role to execute a task as an expert. My role is to facilitate the growth, the development, and the success of a business through its people. So, for them to have these light bulb moments is the key, because that means they're going to be able to now go on and do something of greater value than what they were doing before. It's not my role to do it for them. It's my role to facilitate that they can do these things.
Right. Sometimes I am leaving this conversation with this visual image of you holding someone's hand on the end of the diving board and ready to jump. I think it's a great image. It's a great, we always say small business owners are no longer alone. With InsightCEO, even business owners are no longer alone. We just trademarked that. It's in the process of being trademarked. And one of the coolest things is as a solopreneur, it is so hard to step up and look out, and you're in that office and you're all alone, and all of the stuff that you're talking about right now, whether you're alone in your doctor's office and there's a team out there, nobody really knows what it feels like to be the CEO of a company and not have to have all the pressure of all the financial decisions, even no matter how well you bring your team on board with you and collaborate with them, still there's that pressure of being that person who ultimately the buck stops here, right?
Right.
And I think that's the gift of what you do, what we do. It's really about holding each other's hands and being there and jumping off the diving board with them and making sure that they're making the right jump, that they know how to swim when they hit the water, right? Ed, thank you so much. I'm amazed. Nobody has any questions for you. I'm my phone isn't blowing up. You must have been very conclusive with your conversation, which is always a great thing. I love one of our life coaches that visits us regularly said, Colleen, if you get no questions, it means that you really made people look inside themselves and they're just not ready to take on anymore, and that was a really good call. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. And Ed, why don't you tell people how to get a hold of you?
I am on the web at www.thesmallbusinessdoctor.com. I can be reached via telephone 508-695-2146. And my email address is ed@thesmallbusinessdoctor.com.
Love it. Thank you so much for being with us. As always, I'm Colleen Ferrary. I am the owner and founder of Small Business USA and our family of businesses, and so proud of everything we do. You can reach us at smallbusinessus.com or info@smallbusinessus.com. Thank you so much, Ed. It is a pleasure as always.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
You too.